So the story goes that l'chaim everybody, l'chaim v'lebracha, l'chaim tevim l'sholem, l'chaim v'lebracha, l'chaim v'lebracha, l'chaim v'lebracha, l'chaim v'lebracha. He came to this country, the Frierdiker Rebbe did. And so he did two things basically. Number one, he reestablished the yeshiva, meaning he created a branch to hold on to the old. And he gave that to his older son-in-law, whose name was Rabbi Gerari. And then he created another arm where all the revolutions were, all the new ideas were. And that branch he gave to our Rebbe, who was then called the Ramash. That was his abbreviation. And the previous Rebbe was involved with both of his son-in-laws in their different areas of work to establish a whole network of schools. He really did a lot of stuff with very little resource, very little money. They stretched everything beyond its limits to get as much out of every person and every dollar that they could to maximize Yiddishkeit in America. So in those early years, Chabad, the yeshiva, used to make a dinner, a fundraising dinner, and the previous Rebbe would personally attend. Could you imagine? A fundraising dinner, and the previous Rebbe sat on the dais. That's A, how small Lubavitch was, B, how important the work was, C, how deeply personally involved the Rebbe was. The previous Rebbe would go sit at the dinner, and the Chazan would entertain, and the Rabbi would make a speech, and the Rebbe sitting there. Can you imagine that? It happened for many years, maybe for 5 or 6 years. For quite a few years, he went to the annual dinner of Taimchet Mimim Lubavitch, however they spelled it. You know, Lubavitch, the spelling of Lubavitch in English has been evolving from 1940 to 2025. He would sit at the dinner. So in 1943, they made the third dinner of the Lubavitch Yeshiva in America on the 3rd anniversary of his arrival in New York. The 9th of Adar, 1943. He came to America the 19th of Adar, 1940. It was 3 years later, to the day. At the dinner, the previous Rebbe took out his journal. The previous Rebbe wrote a journal. Every day he wrote in his journal. And in the hall, with all the attended, he read entries from 3 years before, from his first day in America. He read them at the dinner. What did he read? He described coming off the ship, and he was greeted by everybody and anybody. Mayor LaGuardia sent representatives, and they were written from the State Department, from this. Everybody came to give and receive honor, to leech and be leeched off. You know how a public service, you know how the macher systems work. And they gave him a lot of cover. Then he spoke in the port, and it was a whole situation. And wherever he stayed in the hotel, in Greystone Hotel, for about 5 months till he bought 770 in the summer. This was March. He bought 770 in September, and he moved in almost right away, almost immediately. Anyway, so he describes that first day. The covet, the honor that he was given, and the speeches that were made, and all the important people. Each one had to make sure that he was seen and noticed and made a speech, and the Rebbe had to listen to it all and smile and shake hands and all the other wonderful things that the Rebbes get to do. The favorite part of their job is chanufa, flattering and being flattered, phony and being a phony. He hated every minute of it. Anyway, the day was over, and all the dignitaries left. And now it was him and his chassidim. And 2 men walked into his room at night in the Greystone Hotel. And they said to the Rebbe, "We would like to talk to you in confidence." So everybody left the room. And they told the Rebbe the following. And we know this because the Rebbe repeated it 3 years later at the dinner on the 3rd anniversary of his arriving in this country. He said, we've been following the afternoon, your arrival, and the speeches, and the kavod that you were given, the honor that you were given, and the honor that you gave. And we're very afraid We're very concerned. We're concerned that you don't fully understand this new world. We're afraid, based on how people treated you and how you reacted and how you spoke, you do not understand America. And we're here to warn you. Because if you continue on the path that you have set for yourself, based on the speeches you made today, you are going to crash. America is going to destroy you. You're going to suffer such disappointment, it'll be the worst experience in your life. Because American Jews are very, very good for a parade, for an afternoon, a hooray. They're all very religious. The next day they forgot about it, they're on to the next parade. And they told the previous Rebbe, we're coming to you as your friends. And we want you to understand that America is not Europe. You will never make America into Europe. You need to be realistic about what you expect from American Jews, because otherwise they're going to destroy you. Destroy you not with intent. Destroy you because they're going to break your heart. They're going to disappoint you. So the Rebbe, 3 years later, read this out of his journal in public. And you understand, every word he said had to be retranslated because you couldn't understand his chituch. There's audio tapes. They found an audio tape of the previous Rebbe's speech. You don't understand a single word. But when they put subtitles, they put underneath the Yiddish, you can actually see what he's saying. When someone who's able to listen to that very, very, very interrupted speech, he would stop from syllable to syllable. I'm not talking about a whole word, syllables. He would stop and breathe in the middle of a word. You can piece together what he's saying. So he spoke at this dinner, and after he spoke, it had to be retranslated, repeated in Yiddish. He says, imagine what kind of night I had if this is what my friends are telling me. These are my friends. There's an old expression with friends like that. Who needs enemies? My friends are telling me. And in 1943, the Rebbe says, I said to myself, if this is who's going to help me do this work? My friends have already resigned, they've given up, they've thrown in the towel, And he describes the frustration, the pain, the disappointment, but not the despair. In other words, 3 years on, when he read this from his journal, he didn't say, okay, so these guys came and they warned me and I took them seriously and I pulled back. I cried. And this is what my friends are telling me, but I had already decided on my course, and once I made that decision, that's it, I'm done. I don't know how people know this, but I heard that the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbe's Mushka, that our Rebbe's wife, the Rebbe said about her husband, about our Rebbe, a very interesting thing, and it really makes a lot of sense if you understand the Rebbe a little bit. She said, my husband, before he makes a decision, thinks about it for a long time. It could be for years. Before he decides on a certain path, a certain campaign, he thinks about it for a very long time. And while he's thinking about it, he wants to hear every criticism. He wants everybody to tell him what's wrong with it. Tell him 101 reasons not to do it. And because he wants to be constructively criticized. But once he makes a decision, if he decides that he's going to do something, you have an easier time moving a mountain than moving my husband. Once a Rebbe decides on a path, Yaakov Adin Esahar, he'll go through a mountain if he has to. This is the story. The Rebbe came to this country, and there's so many aspects to it. We speak about the modern aspect to it, but there's another aspect. And the other aspect is that America is going to be just as Jewish as the old country. On the one hand, Chabad is all about reaching every Jew where they are. Even one mitzvah is of great value. You don't want to do all 613, do 612. You don't want to do 612, do 611. You don't want to do 2, do 1. It's a very, very modern approach. It's not, if you're not religious, then you're no good. No. The Rebbe told somebody once, a Jew must do as many mitzvahs as he possibly can. That's enough. But there's another side to that. And the other side to that was the Rebbe wanted to see Yiddishkeit in America just as it was in Europe. Just as it was in Europe. When he came here, when the previous Rebbe came in 1940, think about this. There were more yeshivas for college-age boys than there were day schools for first graders. Think about that. It was easier to find, if you were 18 and you were still religious, there was a yeshiva for you to go to. But if you were 5, you went to public school, there was no cheder. How backwards is that? There were more yeshivas for teenagers, for adult boys in the United States of America than there were chadarim for little kids. It was really messed up. For a lot of reasons. And the reasons don't matter, but this is the Matthias, this is the fact. And the Rebbe, so there was a lot of Yiddishkeit in America. There wasn't enough, there was plenty. But everything in America was American. The adage of the American Jew was, what do they say today in Generation Z? Chill. Just don't get excited. Don't get excited. Just relax. Don't get excited. Chill. Don't get excited. If you can do it kosher or half kosher, why do it all the way? Do it halfway. Relax. Judaism is important, but don't get excited. You know, this is America. Don't get excited. There was a lachatchila attitude of b'diavad. It's very hard to translate that in English. There was an attitude of that when it comes to religion, you should always compromise. Why? It's America. And the Rebbe wanted to defy that. The Rebbe wanted that America should be lachatchila. No b'diavad. It should be the way it's supposed to be. So there's a story that I heard that I love to repeat. It's a long, complicated story. But the essence of the story was that there were some rabbis in the Rebbe's room who were trying to help the Rebbe do his job. And one of the things about a Rebbe, don't help him. If he needs help, he'll ask. Don't help him. And they were making suggestions. They were telling the Rebbe how he should do his program. So I'm skipping a lot of the steps of the story, but when the Rebbe understood what they were doing, they were trying to basically politicize him. They were trying to make him do things that they thought was in their best interest, rather than what the Rebbe thought was in the best interest of the Jewish people. The Rebbe it was a very prominent group. The Rebbe interrupted him, didn't let him finish. And he told him the following. He said to them, this happened in 1971, I think. He said, I want you to know that I try to imitate my father-in-law. I try to do everything my father-in-law did. I go after the ways of my father-in-law. But there are 3 areas where I'm different than my father-in-law. He says, number 1, my father-in-law had no money. If I need, I have money. So if I need, the Rebbe told me in 1971, 55 years ago, I can have tonight on this table $5 million in cash if I need it. I have access to, if I need money, I can get it. Number 2, my father-in-law wanted to see America as a mokum Torah. My father-in-law wanted to see America as a place of Torah. He never merited to see it. I'm seeing it. And the third thing that I said, that my father-in-law had people he could talk to. I have no one to talk to. Meaning my father-in-law could talk to Hasidim and they wouldn't help him. They would listen. You know, a Rebbe confides in a chassid, but the chassid has to remember that they're not equals. I can't talk to you. You're telling me how to do my job. They walked out of the Rebbe so stunned. It was the third thing that the Rebbe was saying to them. You know, I can't. If you're going to use me for politics, you're my friends. It's like, who needs enemies? You know, that kind of thing. So this story is a famous story, and everyone tells the story. That the Rebbe said that the 3 things that makes him different than the previous Rebbe is, number 1, that he has money if he needs it. Number 2, that the previous Rebbe wanted to see America as a mokum Torah, as a place of Torah, and he did not merit to see it, and I am. And the third thing is, my father-in-law had friends he could talk to who would listen the way a chassid is supposed to listen. I have no one to talk to. So everybody focuses on the third part of the story. But I focus on the second. What did the Rebbe mean? What did the Rebbe mean when he said, der Rebbe des Schwert gewollt sein, Amerika als Mokum Teire, und es nicht sicher gewesen zu sein. Und ich muss das ja sicher zu sein. Which means my father-in-law, the Rebbe, wanted to see America as a place of Teire, and he did not merit to see it, and I'm living to see it. What did he mean by that? I'll tell you what it means. Okay, now I don't know how much you understand New York, and how far you go back in New York Jewish culture, but I grew up in the 1970s and 80s. Okay, when I was growing up, there was a radio station called WEVD, AM and FM in New York. It was the Forward, the Forwards. 24-hour programming, 7 days a week. Shabbos, Yom Kippur, you name it, they had programming. And it was in Yiddish. The Forward was very Jewish, but it was not religious at all. It was secular. It was like the Jewish New York Times. They owned 2 radio stations, 50,000 watts. In other words, the most powerful radio station AM and FM. Different programming. It doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I remember the tail end of it, you know. First the FM went away, and then the AM moved from 50,000 watts to 10,000 watts, and then it disappeared. It became, what do they call it? What do they call it? Zev Brenner, Jewish Communique, Jewish Talk Line. It's gone. WEVD is gone. But when I was a kid, they had 24-hour programming, 7 days a week, 2 stations. And we used to listen to a guy named Art Raymond. Art Raymond. Remember Art Raymond? Roosevelt, you're too young for Art Raymond. Do you remember Art Raymond?
Vaguely.
Anybody remember Art Raymond? Am I the only one? Art Raymond was not religious. But every day we were ready for 2 or 3 hours and he played Hasidic music, Jewish Hasidic. Every once in a while he'd put on Bamir Bistashane or he put on some Kalisha, but otherwise he played music that we could listen to. And we listened to Art Raymond. Rabbi Weinberg was on WEVD, Rabbi Hecht, all the Jewish programming. Rabbi Teitz, Olav Shalom, his Daf HaShavua, all on WEVD. When WEVD went away, Jews had to find other places to do programming. But all the Jewish programming was done on WEVD, AM and FM in New York. So if you were listening to Art Raymond, and Art Raymond finished, and my mother forgot to turn the radio off, we would get to listen, basically to upper courses. We'd get to hear stuff that my mother didn't want us to hear because it was Jewish, but it wasn't Yiddish. It wasn't Yiddishkeit. It was Jewish because it was Jewish people, but that's about it. And they would have Yiddish news in the most elegant Yiddish ever heard. The guy who was speaking didn't believe in God, didn't believe in Moses, didn't believe in Abraham, but he had such a good Yiddish. And he would tell the Nayas from Yisrael, the Israeli news. So my mother would turn off the radio when Art Raymond went off. But if she wasn't around, we would listen to all kinds of garbage. So this is a program that I heard personally. This is the 1970s. I was before Bar Mitzvah. Bar Mitzvah was 19...
Went till the 90s.
Yeah, of course. But first the FM disappeared. Then the AM moved from 50,000 watts to a smaller station.
That's what it's a holy station. I heard it say, love it.
Yeah. But you know why it was holy to you? Because you didn't understand Yiddish. Yeah. As long as you understand Yiddish, it was holy. If you understood the Yiddish, the English was better than the Yiddish. Huh?
I only spoke Yiddish.
But that Yiddish you didn't understand. Ja verstanden.
When they started asking questions,
the Yiddish disappeared. Anyway, so I overheard a whole conversation. What was the conversation about? It's really an existential thing. It's a phenomenon that always exists in every culture, in every society. And it never stays. They were talking about the centrist Jew. The centrist Jew. The centrist Jew means he's Jewish, but he doesn't get carried away, you understand? Yeah? The icon, I'm using the wrong word, the artifact that was defining the demise of the centrist Jew, the article that they focused on to explain the demise of centricity was, quote, the black hat. That was the big deal, the black hat. It wasn't that you kept Shabbos, it wasn't that you studied Talmud. The black hat. The black hat was a terrible omen. It was a representative of a polarization. You understand? Black and white. The whole Jew, and I was listening to this as a 12-year-old and trying to understand what's wrong with the black hat. You had big yeshivas in this country and great scholars. Forget about black. They didn't wear hat at all. They didn't wear beards. They didn't wear gartlach. They were very learned people, but they were American, you know. And as the 50s turned into the 60s and the 60s turned into the 70s, all of the yeshivas, if they didn't become very, very left, became black hat, became very religious. And the logic behind it is simple and true and important. There's an ancient truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. Compromise is unsustainable. Centricity never stays in the center unless it's true. It can't. You know, there's people who are extremely religious and extremely not religious, and you say, we want to be a little bit religious. the children are either going to say, I'm not interested, or I want to do it all the way. I don't want to live in this compromised space. Do you know anything about conservative Judaism? Do you know anything about conservative? I'm going to accept the answer as no, and I'm going to tell you. Conservative Judaism is an American invention. Do you know that? There was no such thing as conservative Judaism in Europe. There was reform. There was orthodoxy. There was, black hats, those terrible people. And then there was reform. Reform began as an enlightenment movement. It was an intellectual movement. It was a scholarly movement. It was an academic movement. If the early reformers would show up today and see what's going on in the reform movement, they'd cry. It's like the academics who started the secular universities would go and see what's going on today's university campuses. They'd burn them to the ground. They wanted to create centers of learning. And they created centers of advocacy and of counterculture and of every kind of every kind of lack of constraint. That was not what they saw when they had this vision of an academically excellent environment. The conservative movement was created. I had a Rabbi Hollander spoke for us once. In 1886, they had the first graduating class from the seminary in Cincinnati. Whatever, Cincinnati. 1886. And after they graduated, they went to a treifa restaurant and they served them oysters with alle Schwarzjahr. Every single one of the graduates in that university, that Reform Seminary, got up and walked out of the restaurant. They wouldn't eat the food. They were disgusted. Their school, their professors, took them to a non-kosher restaurant after they graduated as rabbis and said, "Excuse me, kosher!" Conservatism was born out of a defiance of the violation of the reform. The reform had no bounds. Just be reformed, just whatever you want. And American Jewish Reform rabbi said, "Excuse me, Judaism has meaning. Conservative Judaism is actually coming from the Reform. That's why it's called conservative. Why isn't it called liberal Judaism? Conservative Jews keep less standards than we do. Why are they called conservative? Because they're going away from the Reform. And their whole idea was, we're going to create the Yiddishkeit. Okay, we have the Reform ideology. Did God create the world? Maybe. Does God exist? That's a different question. How old is the earth? Nobody knows. Did God actually give us the Torah? Probably not. But is it worth preserving? Absolutely. But they wanted to keep mitzvahs. They didn't want to flush it all down the toilet and create a social religion. They wanted to have teeth. But don't take it that seriously. Don't take it that seriously. It's important. We got to have tradition. Kosher is kosher. Shabbos is Shabbos. Mikveh is mikveh. My father knew a conservative man in his work. He said to him, there's a deoraita and there's a derabanan. If it's biblical, you got to keep it. Conservative in the 1970s, not 1886. The conservative movement is no longer the conservative movement by their own definition. Why? Because the nature of compromise is that it compromises itself. The nature of compromise is that it never stays in the same place. So I'm listening to the radio as a 12-year-old, and these talking heads they're lamenting the loss of the center. The loss of the center within the Orthodox world is modern Orthodoxy. The loss of the center within the greater Jewish world is conservative Judaism. But people are saying to themselves, either I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. Why should I do it halfway? It's stupid. Why? Because compromise is unsustainable. The whole Jewish establishment was built on compromise. Everything was, if you could do it lechatchila, do it b'di'evet, do it b'di'evet. The car has to be lechatchila. The house has to be lechatchila. The neighbor that you live in, the friends that you socialize with, your identity as a good American, that has to be the best. But Yiddishkeit, don't get carried away. It's important. So don't misunderstand. It's important. But don't be a fanatic. A scratch on your Cadillac, that's the worst thing in the world. But if the mezuzah is missing a letter, don't get so excited. Relax. Relax. It's a nice tradition, but come on. It's not a Cadillac. So the Rebbe said that the previous Rebbe was deeply bothered by this philosophy, not by the reality, by the philosophy. Frum Jews thought that way. Orthodox Jews, Frum Yidden. My grandparents were in this country, you know that? I go back to the 1880s in America on my mother's side. They were always frum. But I'm too young. My grandparents became more religious as their children went to yeshiva. My grandmother was born in 1923. Spent her whole life, my best friend was a black girl. I said, Bobby, how did you stay frum? How did you stay frum? Never lived a day in the yeshiva. And she didn't live in Borough Park or Williamsburg. She lived in the Rockaways. A whole year there were no Jews around. They used to come in the summertime to vacation. So how'd you stay? I said, how'd you stay frum? She said, I lived for the summer. She said, I lived for the summer. A whole year waited for the summer. Because the summer she was surrounded by other Jewish girls. She got married before she was old enough to think for herself. She was 18 years old. She married my grandfather. Something like that. Yeah, 18 years old. But even that generation, being normal was more important than being Jewish. Their children, that means my mother and her brothers, and one of them to live and be well, and one of them is Oliver Shalom and her sister. It's a whole other generation. They were Jews. So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe de Shver, my father-in-law, wanted to see America as a place of Torah. There was a lot of Torah in America. But he wanted to see what they call the black hat. He wanted to see a frum Jew who sees the only thing that matters to me is Yiddishkeit. Finished. Don't take it seriously. This is the most important thing. That's why by the Rebbe it was so important there should be nobody of it. The Rebbe fought for Chalav Yisrael. Even in non-Lubavitcher programs, he was fighting for Chalav Yisrael for two reasons. First of all, because not Chalav Yisrael is not kosher. But the whole attitude of Chalav Stam, there was kosher milk. Why do you have to give not kosher milk? It's just as fresh, it's just as tasty, it costs a few pennies more. Why? Because why are you being fanatic? Why? Just stop, relax. And they have, no, this matters. This matters more than anything else. And over the last 85 years, America's changed. The whole Jewish world, it's not just more Jewish, it's Jewish the same way it was in Europe. The only thing that matters is Yiddishkeit. So the Rebbe said, my father-in-law, das nicht Zeichen gewesen zu sehen, ich hab das ja gesagt. The previous Rebbe never saw that. He saw a compromised America. Even the beards and the payas. I see in America, the next generation of Jews are Jews. You understand? This is a word. It took I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I should say this. The Rebbe had a very close friend, someone that he knew and respected a lot. There's a lot of mutual. His name was Rabbi Soloveitchik. Chaim Dalfin wrote a book. Chaim Dalfin wrote many books, which I did. And everything in his book is sourced. So, the Rebbe and the Rav, he calls it. The Rebbe and the Rav. Soloveitchik got to America in the mid-30s. The Rebbe came in 41. They knew each other from Berlin. They went to school together. They sat in the same class. And the respect they had for the Rebbe was still here. He built a mixed school, boys and girls together, Maimonides Day School, which is still existed. It's falling apart now in Boston because nobody wants to go to it. If you want to go to Maimonides, why to go to public school? If you want to go to yeshiva, why to go to a mixed school? Go to a real yeshiva. In the 1930s, in this book by Rabbi Dalfin, he writes that his students came to him, Rabbi Talmidim, and they said they want to open up a day school in the image of Maimonides. Boys and girls mixed. So he said to them, why? Why are you making it mixed? So they told him, Rebbe, you made it mixed. And he said to them, you know what I would do to go back and change that? I can't, but you could. He came to America around the same time as the Rebbe. He saw himself as a Gadol Yisrael. He certainly was a descendant of Gadol Yisrael. And in his own way, they were Gadol Yisrael. He did not believe it was possible to make black-hatted Judaism in America. He didn't think it was possible. He thought in America, Judaism is going to be modern. He told his students, you want to be from in America, you need a college education. It was a shita. I met a man whose children, he has 3 sons. One of them is a big Rosh Yeshiva in one of Rabbi Feinstein's yeshivas. His other children are Lubavitch Chassidim. He told me personally that he was getting out of an elevator. He was a lawyer. And the Rav was walking into an elevator. He grabbed him by the collar. And he sent his kids to Lubavitch. And the Rav wasn't happy about it. He grabbed his kid by the collar. He says, promise me you're going to send your kids to college. Promise me you're going to... And he couldn't promise because his kids were not listening to him. He wanted his kids to go to college. They didn't want to go to college. Promise me you send your kids to college. Could you bring me my bag? Do you mind? So he couldn't promise. But the Rav wouldn't let go. And he held on to him until he promised. So his kids are Chabad rabbis, you understand. He says that he fought with them and fought with them and fought with them. Some of them finished their degree when they were 40, but he kept his word to the Rav. They all finished the college degree. Because Rabbi Soloveitchik believed that in America, if you're not going to have a college education, you're not going to be from. The logic was that Judaism in America needs to be modern. Oh, this is the wrong word. Judaism in America needs to be modern. The Rebbe came here and said, oh no, Judaism in America will be the same thing as it was in the old country. And if you were alive in the 50s, and you were alive in the 60s, you would have said that the Rav was right and the Rebbe was wrong. There was a lot of Yiddishkeit. But the shtel, the gisha, the undercurrent was, as the Rebbe used to say, America is anders. America is different. By the time the 60s turned into the 70s, it became apparent that American Jews are Jews like any other. And the Rav acknowledged it. He said, again, I don't want to put words into his mouth. I really don't. I have no right to put words into his mouth. But I understand that he came to see, to use the words of the Friedrich, he underestimated American Jews. You could be a Jew here just like in Russia, just like in Poland. We're not as smart as them, we're not as religious as them. But the priority, that what matters is Yiddishkeit and nothing else, this is part of this revolution. On the one hand, there's this openness and this acceptance. On the other hand, this idea that a Yid is no compromise. There's a Jew whose name was Rabbi. We're not on their level. Yeah, but the idea that Judaism is without compromise, this was something. So what I'm saying is, on the one hand, that Rabbeinu was so open. If a person wants to do one mitzvah, it's enough. But on the other hand, the vision, the trajectory is we should be completely Jewish. Completely Jewish. And the Rebbe said it took 30 years. I'm putting words into the Rebbe's mouth, but my Rebbe, the Shved, didn't see it. Friedrich Rebbe didn't see that America, and I am. I'm meriting to see it. It's a cook, it's an approach, it's an understanding of what the Rabbeim wanted. Yeah. Okay, l'chaim everybody. L'chaim. L'chaim v'lebracha. Thank you for coming and for staying and for listening and for bringing. L'chaim Oh, What is Okay. Chaim with a bracha.